A goofball South Carolina state representative proposed a bill that is the most obvious violation of the First Amendment I've ever seen. So Gawker explains here, quote, "You may remember State Representative Mike Pitts of South Carolina from his defeated efforts to keep the Confederate flag flying at the South Carolina State House last year. Well, now Pitts wants to establish a government-run responsible journalism registry to screen and approve reporters." Wow. Okay, so the bill is called the South Carolina Responsible Journalism Registry Law, which is very Orwellian of him. Orwell would be proud. And you can face a fine or even jail time for incompetent reporting under the bill. Incompetent reporting. So you get punished, quote, "if the person has demonstrated a reckless disregard of the basic codes and canons of professional journalism associations, including a disregard of truth, accuracy, objectivity, impartiality, fairness, and public accountability as applicable to the acquisition of newsworthy information and its subsequent dissemination to the public." Okay, so this is a very, very long way and a fancy way of describing the basic principle of, if me no likey, me throw you in jail. That's what they're saying. Because look at what they say. They say, if you do something as a journalist or a reporter that demonstrates a disregard of truth, accuracy, objectivity, impartiality, fairness, and public accountability, well, then you're violating the law. But that leads to the logical question, who determines that? Who would determine objectivity, accuracy, impartiality, fairness in journalism? I don't know if you guys know this, but there are people who exist in the world who say the Daily Caller and WorldNet Daily are the most objective, fair, and accurate sites there are. And then there are also people on the flip side who say that, MoveOn.org and Daily Kos and different sites like that, they represent the most objective, accurate, fair strand or strain of journalism. So in order to determine this, you would have to quite literally set up a government body, and then the government body would determine whether or not something falls into these guidelines. I don't want the government deciding that. And I certainly don't want the guy who vehemently argued in favor of the Confederate flag to stay up to determine that. I mean, think about how silly this is. If you go up to this guy and you say, "Hey man, look, I'm not buying your heritage, not hate argument about the flag. I'm not buying the it's my culture, it's my heritage, it's about my forefathers, it's not about racism, it's not about bigotry, it's not about intolerance." If he makes that argument, you can just say to him, "Look, I don't buy that. I don't think that's objective. I think you're being a subjective prick, and you're doing all these rationalizations to try to get to the place where you want to be." What would he say to you? He'd say, "No, you're doing that. You're the one that's not objective. I'm just telling you the historical reality about the Confederate flag. It's tied to racism and bigotry. The people in the Confederacy fought to uphold slavery." He would say, "No, you're not being objective by saying that." And under this law, if you write an article about that, well, he might be able to say, "That's nice. Now get in the jail cell. I disagree with your article. We're going to pull it down and get in the jail cell." Oh my goodness, Stalin would be so proud of this. This from the small government people. The small government people want to set up a government body, a government agency to determine what is objective and fair in journalism. My ass. And furthermore, there's an embedded problem here too. There's an inherent problem with if you set it up like this. Naturally, whatever the goals are of the government, they're going to bias their decisions in that direction. So if there's real hard-hitting investigative journalism and reporting about corruption within the South Carolina government, or, a problem that they were directly responsible for, the government was responsible for, they're not, obviously they get that case in front of them, they're going to say, "Yeah, let's take this one and put it over here because we meant well, and you're attacking us too harshly, but we meant well, so therefore we're going to say this is not fair, so get in a jail cell." You know who would love this law? Donald Trump. We did the story the other day about how the Washington Post was like, "We're going to run with that story about how you bankrupted the Taj Mahal and were horrible at business because you claim you're so great at business. We're going to run that story." He's like, "If you run it, I'm going to sue you. And I'm going to sue you, and the goal isn't even necessarily to win. It's just to try to bankrupt you, try to make you spend a lot of money in court so that you learn your lesson and you don't do it again." Imagine a guy like Donald Trump had this capability. He was given the green light. Go ahead and do this. we'd live in a police state. We live in an authoritarian state, totally, through and through. But the good news is, of course, this would never, ever, ever get through any federal court. It would get struck down immediately. This violates the basic tenets of the First Amendment, which leads to the final irony, which is the same people who scream about, oh, Constitution's not debatable, man, let me tell you right now. This guy literally made arguments about the Second Amendment for guns in South Carolina. It's not debatable. Constitution, man, it's Constitution. Got to move along. Can't debate that. It's not a matter of opinion. All of a sudden, the First Amendment, when they don't like it, when it's inconvenient for them, well, that one is debatable. The First Amendment's debatable. Second Amendment, not so much. And then also, let's be clear, they have a historically inaccurate interpretation of the Second Amendment. But it's funny how they cry about the Constitution when they think it's convenient for their argument. But then when they dislike it, well, put that aside. We don't give a shit.